It was quite a pivot at the end, Derek. Thank you, but you actually teed me up. So Derek mentioned that Canada's hosting the G7. He mentioned the G20, and he mentioned other international processes. Some of you are all focused on getting Plant 1 going. Some of you are focused on optimizing a certain technology. Some of you are focused on, realizing the potential of a certain zone of biomass. And so international processes do not necessarily jump out at you as something that you can get engaged with. It's actually my job to facilitate that. So if you are interested, I'll be here all day, and I'll be explaining to you now how you can participate. You might want to start the clock, or I'm just going to keep going. So anyway, so the point is that yeah, so I'm here, and it's my job. I manage an international process that connects industry leaders into these international processes, so your voice is effectively communicated to the people that are setting the environment that then your businesses work in. All right, and so 2024. Hearkening to Einstein, this was the annus mirabilis, really, for the bioeconomy. So we had incredible synergy, and we've created what I refer to as an engine that's going to be driving international progress in increasing market demand for bio-based fuels, chemicals, and materials, and I really appreciate seeing the information about building materials. And so this engine consists of three components. It consists of evidence, it consists of action, and it consists of ambition. So as you know, every year the UNFCCC has an annual conference. It's called the COP. That's really inappropriate because that just means Conference of the Parties. So we should be calling this the Climate COP as opposed to the Biodiversity COP that took place in Colombia this year. So we had the Climate COP. It was just in Baku, and next year it is in Brazil. And so we have a fantastic opportunity because the COP presidency, the host of the COP, helps set the agenda, and Brazil is as bioeconomy focused as anywhere in the world. So we can think of this as an engine, but we can also think of it as a ratchet that can change the conventional wisdom around the use of biomass in the energy transition. Wouldn't all of you love it if your local officials, your national bureaucrats were all on board that biomass will be 20% of the energy transition? If you were starting there, you don't have to pull them along. It's already in their brain that biomass is part of what we're going to do. It is sustainable, and it is helpful to the solution, instead of having them purely focused on hydrogen or other electricity-based solutions. And so what we're doing is we are working with governments, the International Energy Agency, and we bring them together in these international processes in order to cement the enabling environment that you need. So what does that mean in practice? That means trade, that means markets, that means harmonized price signals that come from the use of life cycle assessment in policy making. These are all the things that are going to be the background that are going to enable your innovation. And I have a lot of friends in the room. We're all teammates. We're all moving this forward, and it's really a pleasure to be here, and thanks to Jeff for the invitation. So a little bit more detail. We are living through a political transition everywhere where the idea of top-down telling people what to do on climate has failed. We've seen this in France, we've seen this in the United States, we're about to see this, as I'm told, I don't live in Canada, but we're about to see this in Canada, where the idea of top-down bureaucrats explaining to people what's in their best interest is failing. And so what's happening is the priorities for the bioeconomy need to match the interest. We need to democratize the bioeconomy. And so what does that mean? That means energy security. Number one, and Europe got a rude awakening when their criminal natural gas supply was ripped out from under them and is forcing them to rethink where they produce all their carbon-based products. So it's about energy security. It's, as we heard very well, it's about jobs, it's about training, it's about better jobs, it's about distributing the wealth. We had, in the United States just now, we had the rural population, whether it was Anglo or Hispanic or whatever, spoke up and said, we're tired of being told how to do things. We're going to do things in a way that works more democratically. And then lastly, of course, there is the goal for GHG emissions, but I put to you that in every country with a successful bioeconomy, like a really to the bone successful bioeconomy, climate almost, well, let me be careful. Climate assists, but the underwhelmed, whether Thailand, Brazil, United States, it started with energy security and it started with rural employment. So as I said, I managed, so there's this sort of sequence here. So on the, I hope it's your right, On the right, we have these international processes, the G20, UNFCCC, APEC, et cetera, all of which Canada is a part of. And we have these energy transition leaders, International Energy Agency, the Clean Energy Ministerial, and then we have the Biofuture leaders. And so what I do in partnership with many people in this room is drive information and use these international processes to ensure your visions are realized. Okay, and so what does this look like in practice? So in practice, actually Derek mentioned it, this year Italy hosted the G7. And in their G7 presidency, Italy took a stand. They were tired of being lectured that the only future is an electron-oriented future. They understand that we in the bioeconomy are ambitious, we're arguably idealistic, we want a better world, but we're practical because the better world is going to have a lot of carbon. And we provide that carbon in those fuels, chemicals, and materials. And Italy joined us in being practical and saying to their European neighbors in France and Germany, essentially, get real. Let's focus on what can and should be done. And so the minister of, I think he's Minister of Energy, but oh yeah, he's the Minister of Environment and Energy Security, Gilberto Pichetto. He came out and was very clear in much apparently how Ed Miliband is, which I hadn't just learned, is that sustainable biofuels can and must provide a fundamental contribution to the decarbonization of the transport sector at a global level. And to echo this point, I was recruited to manage what's called the Turin Joint Statement on Sustainable Biofuels. We have over 100 companies have signed on to this joint statement. We are bringing that statement to Canada this year. We will reopen it for your signatures. We want your participation. We want you to petition your government and the governments of the world to create the enabling environment that you need. Okay, so in terms of the types of progress that's happening, the keystone knowledge provider for the world, the keystone analyst for all of these processes is in fact the International Energy Agency. And the International Energy Agency has been slowly, cautiously, practically thinking about the global bioeconomy. And so they have been our partner. And so our role is to connect you to the International Energy Agency so they understand what your thinking is, they understand what your issues are. And so what the companies that I work with have been saying is we need to point out the deficiencies in the use of life cycle assessment for policymaking. And so the IEA prepared a report on that, and they looked deeply at this. And if you look at the chart on the right, on the lower axis is increasing uncertainty of quantification. Uncertainty is bad, right? And then if you look at the vertical axis, that's increasing impact on carbon intensity. So what we see is that we understand issues around BECCS, we understand issues around the industrial processes, low uncertainty, but that ILOC is in the upper right corner, which is not where we want to be. It has a high impact on your score, and there's a lot of uncertainty in that score. So the IEA, the cornerstone of international policy making, is coming out and saying that the use of iLook is not beneficial to that process. This is frankly quite revolutionary and can lead to a lot of positive change, because if we reduce that source of variability in these LCA models, we can get to a more harmonized use of LCA that will increase trade and will increase the economic benefits from using biomass. All right, so I'm going to go relatively quickly. A big highlight for the year is that these 9 countries, again, Canada, Italy are included, chose to announce an action plan to collaborate on increasing demand for and use of future fuels, integrating supply chains on future fuels, and the need for common and transparent standards for life cycle accounting and sustainability of fuels. So what this is about bringing biofuels and e-fuels to the same table and allowing a proper apples to apples comparison. So as I said, I would run out of time. So I'm just going to finish by saying this, that as Derek pointed out, Canada is hosting the G Summit in Kananaskis, Alberta this year. In addition, and this is what's more important to this crowd, that there will be a climate, environment, and energy ministers meeting. And what we want to do is we want to bring you or your representatives, your industry leaders to that meeting, and we want to follow up on the Turin Joint Statement, where we can address all of the issues that I've mentioned today, and something for us to think deeply about. Something for us to all think deeply about is, if you look at the biomass-rich countries, there's a lot of them in the Western Hemisphere. We have a different view of biomass than other parts of the world that are short on protein, that are short on biomass. We should not be letting those countries that are fearful and precautionary govern how we use our resources. And so I encourage you all to participate. Your presence and your math, just your presence in these processes captures attention, it captures the imagination of the policymakers, and your minds are essential for us to know what you need. So I look forward to working with all of you and working with your associations like Canadian Fuels Association, or is it Alliance? I always forget. Anyway, Canadian Fuels Association and Advanced Biofuels Canada and similar such institutions. Thank you.